Good afternoon or good evening, depending on when you're watching Conversations. It's really a pleasure to have Cheryl Zoll with me, presently the Executive Director at the Survival Center and soon to retire, I understand.
Resign.
Oh, resign.
Yes.
After a tenure of at least 6 years.
6 years, yep. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about that 6-year experience with her in a moment. This is Conversations, and this will be a sequel to the new program that we developed called Celebrating Community, and we started with the Survival Center. And I have to tell you, it was quite an experience for us doing that show at the center. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of our viewers have already seen it. What was the reaction by the people who use this facility and who are on the staff?
Well, people were very honored that you started the series with the Survival Center. We feel like we're an important institution in Amherst, and so it was nice to be celebrated, to be that kind of a community institution. I heard a lot of different reactions. I thought it was just marvelous. I thought you did a great job of capturing all of the different services that we provide, but more than that, really capturing the sense of community that was there. So people know when they come to volunteer, they may also be receiving things in other ways, and it's a real community where people are helping each other out and building each other's strengths, and I felt like that really came out in the show. Some people I talked to were very inspired by the show. They learned things about the Survival Center they didn't know before. One person told me she really appreciated the historical perspective that she got on where the Survival Center started and how things had changed over the years. And my staff really felt like it was a wonderful introduction to the Survival Center, and hoped that it would serve as an invitation to people to come and actually see the Survival Center and participate in the community. Because as one of them said, you can't really know what the Survival Center is like unless you go there and experience it. So we want people to take this absolutely as an invitation to drop by.
Well, I'm delighted with the response because I think it reflected the program really focused on you guys. And there are many hundreds of people, not only in this community, but outside our community, hill towns and so on, who have contributed in some way.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is online. You know, when we first started to go online, I made the statement, today Amherst, tomorrow the world. Mm-hmm. And so no matter where you are, you can find the Survival Center right on amherstmedia.org. Mm-hmm. And look under local programming, and then look for Celebrating Community. And this is going to go on and on and on. So if people want to know more about the Survival Center and how they can help nourish it, that's a good place to start.
That's right.
Watch the show and then pick up the phone and make a call and make a connection. Tell me about the students that have been a part. What an amazing experience that must have been for, and is now.
You mean for students who come and volunteer?
That's right.
Yeah, so we have about 175 volunteers a week, and a third of those during most of the year are students. And they range from high school students, sometimes even junior high school students, through college and graduate students. I think when people come to the Survival Center as volunteers, a lot of times their initial motivation is maybe they're taking a class that's telling them they have to volunteer, or they have an idea that they want to give back to the community in some way. And what our experience has been with many students is they come and they suddenly realize what an incredible community they've come and have been a part of. Actually, one of the volunteers on the show said that, an older, she won't like it if I call her an older woman, but she's older than Sarah Ann.
Not sweet 16.
That's right, yeah. Coming thinking, oh, I'm going to come and, you know, do something good for the community. And of course, they are contributing in a major way, but their eyes really get opened in terms of what kind of a community it is and how rich and how it's just people at the Survival Center. It's not, people who go there aren't different from people you'd see anywhere. It's a varied and interesting community. We had some Amherst College students who did a project about, we have an initiative going now about It's called Fighting Hunger, Building Health. And we're really trying to exploit the health building potentials of the things we already do. And so these Amherst College students were doing a little study for us to see what were some best practices at other food pantries and other soup kitchens. And I asked them at the end, what did you learn from this? And that was really what they told me. They said, we didn't realize that this was such a community and anybody could be here, and it's just a place where people are coming with all kinds of needs and all kinds of gifts and working together to get things done. So I was really glad about that. Their paper was also very good, but to me, one of the best things about that experience for them was that they had realized that about a place like the Survival Center.
If you walk in during the lunchtime, it just, the problem and its vastness hits you in the face.
That's right, yeah.
Because you realize that you're not just dealing with new unemployed during this period of severe recession, but you're also dealing with chronic unemployed, the disabled community,
That's
the
right.
mental health problems in the community that are not being addressed by society. And this is the one place they gather where they get the basics of life. You want to talk about that and how you connect them with services.
Well, part of what people get from coming to the Survival Center is that feeling of being part of a community. But then, of course, people have needs beyond that: food, health care, and clothing, which we provide with our core programs. And then our vision for the Survival Center is to be a real community center. And so we partner with a lot of different organizations. So Elliott Homeless Services has a caseworker who comes. We have people coming from the food bank and community action, healthcare for the homeless, who help with things like health insurance, food stamp benefits. We had people doing tax preparation there, fuel assistance this year. So one of the things we try to do, especially since in this area transportation is such an issue, is if someone comes to the Survival Center, they can get a lot of things done at once. And then we collaborate as much as we can. We're part of a lot of the local human service coalitions, so we know, if a family comes to us and they're struggling, let's send them to family outreach. Or if somebody's got a young son who could use some mentoring, we're going to refer them to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and so on. So people have said about Amherst that it's a place where human service organizations cooperate more than any other, actually this whole region, more than other places they've been, and that's certainly been our experience. We're really all working together. And so we, through a combination of bringing people services to the Survival Center and referring people out to partners that we actually know, because of the coalitions we participate in, we feel like people are getting a lot of what they need.
And for the people who are watching today, if you haven't seen the Survival Center celebration, you can get it online. It's amherstmedia.org. We're not going to try to replicate that today. We don't need to, because we will be by watching that program, you're seeing people in action doing things for themselves. And the one of many things that I was struck with was the children of the folks who were getting help, who are now volunteers, and have moved up the ladder a little bit in terms of economic opportunity and giving back to the community. And it's just amazing. And it's the footprint when you walk in is dignity.
That's great that you feel that, because that's definitely what we want.
It's dignity, and that's something that's missing usually around the public social services. This is a place where you're not alone and you're respected. And that's so important at this time when people, their ability to function under these conditions is severely, hit on.
That's right. And that goes back to Jane Holapa's original conception of the place, which is a place where people are coming together to help each other out.
Let's talk about Jean. This started back in 76 or
75, yeah. And she had fallen on hard times and was looking around to try to figure out how she could support her family. She was a single mother. And she went to a few agencies that were around then, and she felt deeply humiliated by that experience. And so she wanted to create a place that wouldn't feel like it was humiliating to come to, that a place that had a lot of dignity, as you say, and that really honored people for the gifts they were bringing and not just looked at them as people who needed something. And so she actually started in her house, and she collected food and some other things that she thought people would need, and people started coming together. And it turned out she had recognized a real need, and it quickly outgrew her ability to do that in her house. And so she went to the town, who provided a couple of spaces, and then finally the basement of the school at 1200 North Pleasant, and provided some funding, and the center just grew from there. But always with the idea that this is going to be a place where people will feel good about coming and will feel honored to be, and a real human place.
So this has been in our town since '75.
That's right.
A recognition of the need doesn't end after a so-called recession ends.
That's right, yeah.
There are a lot of casualties. And some people don't survive, some people survive with all kinds of problems.
That's right, and it's important to note that a lot of the people who come to us are working 1 or 2 jobs, but it takes, a good amount of money to provide for a family in this area, and sometimes just a little bit of extra help of a box of food at the end of the month or a couple of loaves of bread makes the difference for those families. Some people are unemployed, or as you said before, they're struggling with disabilities of various kinds. Other people are working, but even with working, it's not enough to get by.
I think we need to know the relationship between how government contributes or doesn't contribute to the needs that have been expressed and dealt with by the local community. In terms of your own agency, let's spell that out.
Well, in some ways we've been very lucky. The town of Amherst was really right in there at the beginning in getting the Survival Center started, and over the last 35 years has been supportive, sometimes financially and sometimes in other ways. The building itself, we received some block grant money to work with the architects in designing the building, and the town went out of its way to make sure that we could meet the codes and understand what we needed to do in order to facilitate the process. So we never had a problem with anybody. It was just wonderful to feel that supported. Beyond the town, it's been tricky. So the Survival Center has had government funding sort of off and on. It had some Department of Mental Health funding for a number of years, largely thanks to Senator Rosenberg and Ellen Story supporting the Survival Center. But then in 2008, that funding disappeared, and there had been some town funding for human services, and then that funding went away. So I think one thing we've learned is that there are many ways in which we can be, the town has been incredible in supporting us, but to sustain the Survival Center, we really need to look to the local community to provide that support, because that's where the interest and the stability really is.
And it happened.
It's amazing.
It sure did.
Yeah.
800 more donors.
For the capital campaign.
That's right.
Yeah, and we have many more donors who support us every year.
Thousands literally coming by over the years.
Oh, it's really amazing. When I started working at the Survival Center, it was a kind of a tricky time for the center, because Vanjie had been there for 30 years, and so this was a new moment. And I was nervous because, she had done an amazing job of keeping the thing going and helping people get their needs met. But quickly I realized how much people love the Survival Center. And so it was really because of that kind of love from the community and support that the Survival Center was able to keep going and then end up where we are now.
So basically it's local money, some town money over the years. But the community stepped up and did it.
That's right. So when the state funding, which was generous when it was around, went away, it was the town that really stepped in. And the town being the town's people, the community that we live in.
Now let's talk about your retirement.
I'm too young to retire.
You're never too young. All those ads
I
on
know.
insurance and retired 50 and
50 and
55.
above. That's what I told
I
my
don't
husband
know
last
people
year.
like that, do you?
No, no. But I was worried. I turned 50 last year, and I was worried that now fell into that. If you're 50 and above, you might consider something that I wasn't really ready to consider yet. So.
Well, it's time. It's time to rest a little bit.
Yeah.
And and you're not going anywhere. In
No.
terms of you're going to stay in the community.
Yeah. No, we love Amherst.
You're rooted. Your husband is at Amherst College.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I understand he's involved in a big project regarding music.
Yes, he's currently working on the production of an opera that will be done in September at the Academy of Music in Northampton. That's based on the story of Daly and Halligan in 1805 or maybe 1806. They were Irishmen from Boston who were walking across the state trying to get to New York, and were unfortunately in the vicinity where somebody was killed along the road. And there was so much anti-Irish, anti-Catholic sentiment at that time that they were instantly accused, even though evidence has pretty much shown that they weren't the culprits. And then they were hung in Northampton. And it was a major event in the state. It was a major event, particularly in Northampton. And it really still highlights the struggles of people who are immigrants and dealing with that kind of prejudice and the obstacles people need to overcome in order to become part of, become accepted.
So you're going to kind of be a helper in that project, I understand.
That's right, yeah. We put on an opera a few years ago, actually right when I started the Survival Center, called Our American Cousin, also written by Eric. And also at the Music Academy. That one was set in Ford's Theater the night Lincoln was shot. And so we have a little bit of experience. So we're looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah. This sounds like another Sacco.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Well, let's breathe for a second.
Okay.
We've been going continuously, and we're doing very well.
Thank you.
So retirement really isn't a retirement for you.
No.
It's kind of moving on, working on another project with others, and then I guess one of these days something is going to attract you, and you say, well, I'm now ready to come back into the struggle, because the struggle to deal with poverty in America will not end in 2013 or 14.
No, that's exactly right. There's a lot of work to do, and I'll be looking for a place where the skills that I have can really be the most useful.
Let's look at the bigger picture that you had to work in. This is the great example of what can be done at the local community. And frankly, that's why we started our celebration series at the Survival Center. Because until people get together and find a way to make problems solved, nothing's going to happen. But we also have to kick in the butt
That's right.
government. Because there are some people in our society who think we have too much government. And those of us who've been in human services would argue that the exact opposite is true. We need more government to create jobs.
That's exactly right.
Stimulate. Instead of welfare, let's create jobs. Let's create educational opportunities. And we're thrust into this a continuous problem that's not going to go away, and the Survival Center is going to continue to do its work. But we need to move to another level. That's something that human service workers have learned over a long time. That society can do better, and our government is there to be used to help the community, to help people. And the distribution of wealth is a problem in our society. And sometimes it took a New Deal to awaken us that jobs instead of bailouts might be a better way to deal with the problems we have today. You want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, I completely agree. I was on a panel a couple of days ago that the League of Women Voters organized around homelessness. And there were about 6 of us on that panel. the one thing that everybody agreed on was how just having affordable housing for people would do so much for allowing people to live in a way that was self-sufficient and do the kinds of things they needed to do to support their families, and how having affordable housing isn't something that can just be created by the Survival Center or some other organization, but it really takes an effort of the government to have the right incentives and the right programs for that to be able to succeed. And you could say that, about anything, food prices, almost anything, job creation, all of the things that you just were talking about. It's really critical, and until the government, and when the government isn't doing that, it's falling to the human services to pick up the pieces. So it's not like if the government isn't doing its job, the problems will just go away. They just fall to the local community, and we're all in this together.
In the few minutes that we have left, I'm not sure how much time we have left. I sort of lost track, but somebody will help me. There'll be a message coming from above. The long-term problems that still need to be addressed. Are we seeing a cutback in mental health services? Are we seeing a cutback in Section 8 housing? Are we seeing a cutback in vital service? Even Meals on Wheels, the other day I understand is being cut back. In other words, these bare essentials, and also probably what's the program for kids in school, early childhood?
Oh, Head Start.
Head Start,
Yeah.
I understand, is taking a hit.
Right, everything is really
So, here it seems a contradiction. The community wants to help people get back on their feet, provide resources to restore their dignity and hopes for the future and for their children. And then we have this contra situation of cutting and saying we can't afford this, that this is the problem. We've got too many people on the dole. We need to, find other ways. And meanwhile, we're bailing out the crooks. We just have a history of none of them are going to jail. That's and nothing's being done. I'm getting on my what's the box you stand on? Soapbox. Yeah. But I'm losing it, so let's go back.
But I think the question you're asking is what are our priorities, and are the priorities of the local community reflected in what our government is doing? And people have different opinions about that.
But the same people who are doing the job locally understand that it can't end there, that we're filling a gap. We're just filling a gap.
Yep.
So it behooves all of us to say, let's not stop at the gates of the Survival Center. Let's deal with some of the basic issues so that we can lessen the burden on average working people who want to work and can't find jobs.
Yep.
And the kids coming out of college who can't find jobs and are faced with big debt.
Yep.
And this is not just a middle class problem.
No, not at all.
It's an all community problem because in order to have a prosperous community, you need people who have jobs. You need people who are spending money at the local stores. Right. Well, I think we're getting to a point where we're going to wrap this up. Cheryl, the job you've done in the community has been acknowledged by so many. I would only be, but I'm going to repeat it. We're grateful to the Cheryls in our society that make things happen, good things happen, and that's why we're celebrating your community.
And it is a real community. Everything that's happened at the Survival Center has been an incredible community effort.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Look forward to seeing you down the road.
Well, I'm sure we'll bump into each other in town.
And I want to thank my colleagues here at ACTV, the staff that steps up to the plate when it's necessary and continues to provide the resources that helps us to do the things we want to do in the community. Once again, I want to remind folks, this is Conversations. You can get this program and others by going to amherstmedia.org under community programming. Look for Conversations. And the same thing for Celebrating Community, amherstmedia.org. Look under community programming, and then look for Celebrating Community. Share this information with your neighbor. Celebrating will continue in the fall. We're going to do the farmers market. We're going to celebrate town meeting.
Great.
We're going to celebrate the peace vigil that's been on every Sunday for 34 years on the Commons. We're going to celebrate other great things that are happening in our town. So if you've got some good ideas on who we should be celebrating, you can contact me by just dropping me a note right here at ACTV. And in the meanwhile, peace. Good night.